My husband sold our home without telling me, and he wasn't even legally allowed to. Standing outside the crowded conference room, my phone trembling in my hand, Jake's name flashed mockingly on the screen. The hallway's soft hum seemed distant, irrelevant, as a wave of unease settled over me. We'd talked earlier. Everything had seemed normal, yet now something felt desperately wrong. When I answered, his voice was cold, detached, almost triumphant. "Anna, I want a divorce," he announced calmly, as if simply changing dinner plans. "I've already sold the apartment. You'll need to find somewhere else to live." I stood frozen, my breath stalling painfully in my chest. 6 years of marriage shattered in a matter of seconds. It wasn't just the cruel indifference in Jake's voice that paralyzed me. It was the name he uttered next. "Zoe deserves better than that tiny place anyway." Zoe. So there really was someone else. For months, I'd ignored my instincts. The late nights, his sudden obsession with appearance, the emotional distance he constantly built between us. I'd silenced those nagging suspicions, believing love demanded trust, patience, loyalty. Now those suspicions crashed back with brutal clarity. My heart pounded fiercely, a dangerous cocktail of hurt, rage, and disbelief. How dare he dismantle our lives without a second thought? How could he think it was that easy to erase me? But Jake had made a fatal mistake, a blind, arrogant miscalculation born from years of underestimating me. What he didn't realize, in all his smugness, was that I'd quietly secured ownership of our apartment months ago. A minor administrative decision he'd signed away carelessly without reading the paperwork. Jake thought he'd delivered the final blow, but he'd unknowingly handed me a weapon instead. As I ended the call, my fingers steady despite the storm inside, I knew this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the start of something else entirely. This was my moment to reclaim everything he'd tried to take from me. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how betrayal taught me to fight back, and how losing everything allowed me to discover who I really was. My hand trembled as I dialed Sarah's number. Every ring stretched painfully until her voice broke through calm and clear. "What's happened, Anna?" "Jake sold the apartment, without my consent." My voice quivered slightly. "He's leaving me for Zoe." A heartbeat of silence. "He did what?" Sarah's tone sharpened instantly. "He can't legally sell something that isn't his. You transferred the deed months ago. Remember?" "I remember," I said, my voice steadying. "Jake obviously didn't." Sarah let out a dry laugh. "His arrogance might finally cost him everything. Has he taken any money?" "From what he said, yes." "Then he's committed fraud," Sarah stated coldly. "I'll contact the buyer immediately. Jake will know soon enough." "I want him to feel it, Sarah," I whispered. "I want him to understand what he's done." "He will," she promised firmly. "But stay quiet. Let him think he's won until it's too late." The call ended. Alone, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. Jake's betrayal stung deeply, but beneath the hurt, anger crystallized into purpose. He believed I was weak, naive, someone he could discard effortlessly. He was wrong. My phone buzzed again, breaking my thoughts. Lily's message flashed briefly. "I just heard. You're stronger than he thinks. I'm here." I took a deep breath, feeling the quiet strength inside me grow. Jake had fired the first shot. Now it was my turn. I returned home 2 days later, carrying a silent storm beneath my calm exterior. Everything in the apartment seemed untouched, yet somehow colder. Jake's jacket still hung carelessly on the chair, shoes kicked aside as always. The normalcy of it felt cruel. The quiet shattered when the front door swung open. Jake stood in the doorway, his expression furious, clutching Sarah's legal letter in his hand. "What the hell is this, Anna?" he demanded, waving the paper in front of me. "You think you can play these games?" "No games," I replied calmly, feeling my heartbeat accelerate. "Just the truth you chose to ignore." He stepped closer, anger radiating from him. "You can't stop me from selling what's mine. It's not yours anymore, Jake. It hasn't been for months." I took the official deed from my bag, holding it out for him to see clearly. "You signed this yourself." Jake's eyes widened in shock. "When?" "When you weren't paying attention," I cut in sharply. "When you were busy lying to me." He clenched his jaw, suddenly defensive. "You think this makes you smart? You're pathetic." "No," I said quietly, stepping closer until he could see the fire in my eyes. Pathetic is cheating on your wife and selling a home that isn't yours. He faltered, anger mixing with fear. Anna, you're making a huge mistake. No, I corrected firmly. You already made it. Before he could reply, the door behind him opened again. Zoe stepped inside, pausing awkwardly when she saw us facing off. What's going on here? She asked cautiously. Jake's face paled instantly. Why don't you tell her, Jake? I challenged softly. Tell Zoe how you tried to sell my apartment illegally. How the money you promised her doesn't exist. Zoe's eyes narrowed sharply. Is that true? Jake looked trapped, fumbling for words. It's complicated. No, Jake. I interrupted clearly, locking eyes with Zoe. It's simple. He lied to you, to me, to everyone. Zoe's glare shifted from confusion to disgust. Without another word, she turned and left, slamming the door loudly behind her. Jake stood frozen, stunned by how swiftly everything had unraveled. You'll regret this, he muttered weakly, unable to meet my gaze. No, I replied evenly, feeling strength surge within me. But you will. As he stormed out, leaving the apartment empty once more, I finally let myself breathe. Jake had underestimated me for the last time, and now he was about to learn exactly what I was capable of. The silence after Jake left was deafening, yet strangely liberating. My heartbeat slowed, each breath steadier than the last. I had faced him down, seen the shock, the desperation in his eyes. But this wasn't over yet. Minutes later, my phone erupted with texts and missed calls, each message from Jake angrier and more desperate than the last. You won't get away with this, Anna. Pick up the phone. Now. I ignored them all. Later that evening, Sarah called, her voice focused and reassuring. The buyer canceled immediately after discovering Jake's deception. They're furious. Jake will be forced to repay every cent. Good, I said softly. He deserves it. Anna, Sarah's tone softened. Are you all right? I'm better than all right, I replied. For the first time in years, I feel in control. She paused. Jake underestimated your strength. That was his biggest mistake. I underestimated it too, I admitted quietly, glancing around at the apartment. But never again. Suddenly, pounding at the door broke our conversation. Anna, open up. Jake's voice echoed angrily from outside. You can't do this. I have to go, I told Sarah calmly. He's here. Stay firm, she encouraged. Don't let him intimidate you. I ended the call, breathing deeply before opening the door. Jake stood there, disheveled and furious. Anna, you're ruining me. Stop this madness. You did that yourself, I said evenly, refusing to back down. You betrayed me, sold what wasn't yours, and lied to everyone, including Zoe. Please, he begged suddenly, his voice trembling. We've been together 6 years. Doesn't that count for anything? I stepped forward, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. It did until you threw it away. Jake's shoulders sank, defeat finally overtaking his anger. Leave, I said firmly, and don't come back until you're ready to sign the divorce papers. He hesitated, then slowly retreated into the hallway, defeated. As the door closed behind him, a weight lifted from my chest. Jake's arrogance had finally cracked, and now I knew. I was stronger without him. I had found my voice, my strength, my freedom, and I would never lose them again. The days following Jake's breakdown were filled with tense silence, punctuated by sporadic, pleading messages from him. I ignored them all, channeling my energy into reclaiming the apartment and my life. One evening, Lily came over, carrying boxes and determination. How are you holding up? She asked softly, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. I feel strangely okay, I replied honestly. Better than I felt in years. She smiled warmly. Let's get rid of Jake's mess then. Together we packed his belongings, suits, shoes, old photographs, carefully placing them into boxes. Each item stirred bittersweet memories, yet every closure felt healing. Has he reached out again? Lily asked gently. I sighed, taping another box shut. Non-stop. He begs, then threatens, but I won't cave. She nodded approvingly. Good. He needs to see you're not the woman he once controlled. My phone buzzed again, interrupting us. It was Sarah, her voice filled with quiet triumph. Jake just signed the divorce papers, she announced. He realized there's nothing left to fight. Relief flooded through me. It's over then. Yes, Sarah affirmed softly. You're officially free. I ended the call, turning to Lily, feeling both weightless and powerful. It's done, I whispered. Jake signed. I'm free. Lily embraced me tightly, whispering, You always were. You just had to believe it. That night, as I sat alone in my now uncluttered living room, the reality of freedom washed over me. Jake's arrogance had blinded him, but it awakened my strength. My world had shattered, but in picking up the pieces, I'd discovered someone stronger, wiser, someone finally unbreakable. Myself. Weeks passed, transforming my apartment into something new, a sanctuary untouched by betrayal or bitterness. With Jake's things gone, it finally felt like mine again. One evening, as city lights sparkled softly outside my window, Sarah visited, carrying paperwork and a bottle of celebratory wine. You're officially divorced, Anna, she announced gently, handing me the documents. It's over. I took the papers, fingers brushing over the final signature, Jake's reluctant acceptance. My breath caught, not from sadness but relief. Thank you, Sarah. You saved me. She shook her head warmly. No, you saved yourself. All I did was remind you of your strength. I smiled softly, feeling a newfound certainty. He thought he could break me. I almost believed him. But you didn't, Sarah replied firmly, pouring wine into 2 glasses. You fought back and won. We toasted quietly. To freedom, I whispered. To strength, Sarah added, smiling knowingly. After she left, I curled up alone, silence wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. Jake's betrayal once felt like an ending. Now, it felt like liberation. My phone lit up suddenly, Jake's name appearing once more. This time his words were simple. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the screen, briefly feeling the ghost of old heartache, then calmly turned off my phone. He didn't deserve my anger or my pity. He deserved nothing from me anymore. Standing slowly, I walked to the window, gazing out into the night. This wasn't just the end. It was a beginning. My rebirth from the ashes of who I used to be. And for the first time in years, I felt truly undeniably free. Months after the divorce was finalized, the apartment had transformed entirely. Gone was the lingering shadow of Jake's presence, replaced by something bright, powerful, distinctly mine. Yet tonight, as rain tapped gently against the window, a familiar photograph slipped from an old book I was sorting. Jake and I, smiling carelessly, unaware of what lay ahead. My heart tightened briefly, not from loss, but from a quiet gratitude. Painful endings often lead us exactly where we're meant to be. The phone beside me buzzed softly, Lily's name illuminating the screen. Are you ready? She asked, excitement radiating through her voice. I took one last look at the picture before placing it carefully aside. I've never been more ready. We stepped out later into the cool night, the city lights glowing gently, promising infinite possibilities. Lily turned toward me, a gentle smile forming on her lips. You know, she said thoughtfully, Jake believed your silence meant weakness. But that silence, it was your greatest strength. It was your courage. I paused, considering her words. I used to think courage meant staying, enduring. Now I know. It means walking away when you must, trusting yourself to begin again. We walked quietly beneath the glow of streetlights, my heart lighter than it had ever been. Yet one question lingered, one I knew would resonate within me forever. How often do we mistake someone's quiet strength for weakness? Arriving at the small cafe where Sarah awaited us, I paused briefly, glancing back at the familiar skyline. Somewhere out there was Jake, trapped in his self-made web of arrogance and regret. I felt neither anger nor satisfaction now, only compassion for the woman I'd been, and pride for who I'd become. Sarah greeted us warmly, raising her glass with a knowing smile. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I agreed softly. Yet as laughter filled the air, my thoughts quietly returned to that photograph, to the girl smiling innocently beside a man who'd never truly seen her. I silently thanked her, for enduring, for breaking, for finally reclaiming herself. Because the truth was simple yet profound. The hardest part wasn't letting go. It was finding the courage to begin again. And as I sat there, surrounded by friendship and possibility, I wondered quietly, are you brave enough to choose yourself? Even when it means losing everything you thought you wanted? That question lingered, powerful and unspoken, inviting anyone who heard my story to carry it forward, shaping their own journey toward freedom.